Don't think you're ready for me. Don't think you're ready for me. Don't think you're ready for me.
Happy Friday. It's
Happy Friday.
yeah, we have the room to ourselves, the two of us. I don't know what happened to Eric and Paul. No, just kidding.
Yeah, apparently some, like real life stuff has to, get in the way of
Yeah.
of our fun. Jeez.
Yeah. I don't think I hit the start. Well, I started the clock early because it's supposed to be 9:30, but it's 9:29 because I was telling Nikki, the best parts are always the pre-show. When we start getting into the flow and we start speaking in tongues, so to speak.
The Sunday school Perseus is coming back.
Yeah. Oh, I told you about that, right? I used to teach Sunday school. So, yeah, sometimes when I really get into it, then I just really start, everything becomes a pulpit, and I just start, preaching it like it is. That's as it would say in the church I used to go to. You got to preach it like it is. You got to call it out like it is. No double talk.
That's right.
I want to recapture some of the early pre-show exchange that we had, and you were talking about how as we're going through, we're in the fourth week of Trump. I think it's the fourth week now, and I don't know about you, but I feel like people are starting to maybe kind of, I don't know, is the honeymoon over yet? Is that energy kind of like waning? That MAGA energy. It's like you said, okay, people are just waiting for what's the next big thing to dazzle them, to keep them engaged, to keep them energized. And for me, so far, the only thing I've seen is, okay, Tulsi Gabbard got confirmed. RFK got confirmed. But is it just me? But it seemed like it was more interesting before they were confirmed. It's like that was the energy. It's like, we have to get them confirmed because they're part of this MAGA thing. But now that they're confirmed, it's like, okay.
Yeah, well, now is the time to start the doing. I mean, there's still some people who need to be confirmed. But now is the time to start the doing part. And I think that lots of us were excited seeing the things that Doge was discovering, and this whole idea that Trump came out with executive order after executive order, really solidifying or at least validating the people who really supported him to thinking that, and our belief that he's actually going to come in and make some changes at least at the executive level, right? So it gave us that sort of excitement and that thrill to see it actually happening, that he is actually living up to his word with those things. And that's great. I mean, we actually did need that. We needed a morale boost in this country. And I think that's kind of what it was, right? Mm-hmm. But now we actually need to see those actions working towards us, because we're seeing the Democrats and, the political enemy side of Trump and America First movement start to fight back within the court system. And then there's, again, like the familiar, trust the plan. They're doing this on purpose. And so that we can get to the Supreme Court. Well, great. Okay. Yeah. If that's a part of the plan, if that's a part of the strategy, let's see great arguments building up to reach the Supreme Court, or at least defeat this at the court level, because we want these actions to be long lasting. And I know we talked about this last week about Congress's direct role here. and passing legislation that codifies a lot of this executive order language that can be, codified at a federal level, right? At least from the, legislative standpoint. And I was actually optimistic watching the Sunday shows. Speaker Mike Johnson did go on to Fox
Mhm.
News Sunday and was interviewed. I don't know if you got to see that. And he talked about codifying some of this stuff in legislation. He didn't say, he wasn't very specific about things, but he was trying to be reassuring that they understand that this does need to happen from a legislative end, and that is their responsibility of Congress. Now, the next step is actually proving and showing us that he made an argument for a large bill to fit everything in. So the people who are pro small bill, let's look at each individual thing, may not get that wish. So that's a little bit disconcerting, but at least he tried to, present the picture that that Congress does know what their role is and what they should be doing. But it's,
Mhm.
yeah, like you said, it's kind of lackluster at this point. There's not this, and maybe we've just gotten too used to the theatrics
Mm.
or I don't know. Maybe that's it. Maybe we just kind of thrive on this theatrical energy. I don't even actually know how to describe it. I'm losing.
So
Mhm.
this might be something that people can relate to, but it's like going to church and you had a great service, a great worship service, a great sermon, and then come Monday.
Yeah. Or it's like, well,
What do I do?
yes, that is actually it. Like you get inspired to get through your week, right?
Mhm.
And often the service, the sermon
Mhm.
does speak to something that you experienced the previous week. So that
Yeah.
sort of, validates your thinking.
Yeah.
It makes you feel that you are spiritually connected
Right.
and that you're on the right path, those kinds of things. And, it doesn't give you that invigorating experience. And then, yes, and then Monday comes and it's almost like, it just kind of almost
I've
erases
always
a
had
little bit
that.
at a time.
Yeah. I
The
always
other,
experienced that. Yeah.
the other kind of church analogy that I have is the revival week, right? You go through
It
this.
is. Oh my, yeah, exactly. It is the revival. And thank you for bringing that up, because I've always wondered why are Maggie Ragley so familiar? There's something like it feels familiar, and that's it. It's a revival meeting. But after the revival meeting is where the real work begins. Your
Yes.
inner work, and practicing what you've heard. And I think this is I hope that MAGA 2.0 has this kind of mapped out. Like they're not just expecting people to show up at rallies and then think that, okay, now you just sit back home and we'll do the other thing. Like people, like, do you think there is a plan to keep people engaged? That energy up. Because going back to the church thing, we had a system where, okay, you may feel like a post-revival Sunday service crash, but at least there's midweek Bible study.
Yeah.
Wednesday, in my case. It was Wednesday, and then there's prayer meeting on Friday. Then Saturday, you may go out there and stand in the street corner and preach, which is what I did back then a long time ago.
Really?
Yes. Yeah, I was that hardcore, Nikki. I was there. I stood in the street corner.
I was in the choir. That's where my message came from.
Oh, I mean, I was in the choir too, so it was like an overachieving.
Oh my gosh.
Overachieve everything, right? But just like prayer meeting, Bible study, go out and preach, and teach Sunday school, and all that, and all that. So, but there were these things lined up during the week to keep you engaged.
Yeah.
Keep you part of the community.
Yes. Yeah.
So. Yeah, that's a bit of my concern too, is that now that he's in office, what is left for MAGA supporters to do, right? People who support him, people who came out and vote for him. And I think that needs to be part of the plan is like, you keep them engaged, because you really, people think that, well, I can just wait till, or at least people that are planning these election cycles, we can just wait till the next election cycle comes in. We just put up ads and, people will show up. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah. Yes. This should be the moment that we are inspired as individual citizens to take up our mantle and do what we're supposed to do. Like what our, each pick a task, pick the thing that you're most interested in, the thing that you either want to see gone, replaced, or see return, or see new, and create that niche, and then work on it. And so that tends to be my philosophy. Sometimes on social media, I get a little bit more, I get distracted by news and the latest, outrage, thwart, but at the same time, I constantly remind myself, what my goals are, what my interests are. There are certain things that just nag me. There are bees that are in my bonnet, and I need to tackle those things. And that's my role. I'm a purpose-driven type of a person. Not everybody is like that.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
That's how I roll. So like I tend to feel like there's something that there are things that I'm good at that I need to be honing in on and perfecting and strengthening. And, and then that's what my role is. But there's just people who are good at pretty much everything. We're all individually perfect in our own way, that we have something that we can contribute. And whether it's an intellectual thing or a physical thing, we need to be contributing that. That's our part. That's our part in this golden era. That the Trump phrase is for us to actually start to be the best people that we can be. And it sounds kind of all like kind of theatrical and like probably overly spiritual to some people, but really it is. I mean, the day-to-day thing that gets you out of bed, the thing that you are good at, find a way to make money off of it, find a way to convince other people that that's important too, and help and get them to help you do that work. That's the only way, at the end of the day, when or at the end of life, when it's all over, when you're taking that last breath, have you done the thing that you're supposed to do? And even if you don't believe it's something you're supposed to do, have you done the thing that you want to do? And that's to me, that's our assignment. You froze for me a little bit, Perseus, so I'm just going to talk. So for me, it's medicine and healthcare. And not everybody in the NDR audience may know my history, but I did practice as a physician. I was trained in both internal medicine, which is adult medicine, and pediatrics, which is a 4-year training program after going to medical school. Many of the people who do internal medicine and pediatrics end up doing some sort of general practice type of work where they're doing preventive medicine. So it's like a family doctor. They see both the adults and the kids in the family. They take board certification in pediatrics separately and internal medicine separately. A lot of most med peds or IMPs people do that, but a lot of us then do go on to specialize. And I went on to specialize into pediatric intensive care. I worked in the ICU for quite a few years. And then I sub-specialized into something called pediatric procedural sedation, where I pretty much put kids to sleep for procedures that were otherwise painful or generally uncomfortable for them. Loved that career. But then I started to discover the parts of healthcare, at least the industrial corporate part of healthcare, that was making things difficult for patients. Difficult for patients to access good quality care, difficult for patients to access affordable care, and difficult for doctors to practice in a way that they felt was ethical and really just sort of using their independent brains, the way that they thought, the way that they were trained, the way they understood how to practice. So I started discovering all the things that impeded that. And it seemed that they were coming from government regulations and sort of this corporate part of medicine that was really the business side of medicine, the revenue side of medicine. And I started getting involved in health policy creation from there.
Yeah.
And so learned a ton of things. Was a contributor to 2 white papers to lower the cost of healthcare. Really with the focus of trying to get back to the root of what medicine should be, which is a doctor and patient relationship without any interference from middlemen. And so, and if anybody's interested in looking at the most recent white papers on Free to Care, the words FREE, the number 2 CARE, all one word, .org, look that up, and then you could actually get to the paper.
Let me put that down on the banner. So what
Sure.
you can, what is it called again?
Okay, here, I'll put it in the chat so you can.
Yeah. Yeah. I was gonna say like an amen to what you said earlier about being purposeful, because I've heard it said differently in another way from so I talked to I have a cousin in overseas that I do this kind of live stream with too, and he used the word intentional. Like you have to do. He's a Gen Z person, but he said that a lot of people, the thing about social media, it doesn't teach you how to be intentional, right? You're just scrolling passively. Like you have to know, even if you're looking for stuff on social media, you have to know what you want to look for and then act on it. So,
I'm actually going to put the papers actually on this link right here. And it's under report.
Okay, go check that out. So you have written some proposed policy.
Yeah, and so it's in there. And the reason why I'm kind of going through this lengthy process, because that's how I got started in this business. We went to go and I found people on social media complaining about stuff, and then we formed, small grassroots organizations, and then we built a large coalition. It was spearheaded by a man named David Balat, Balat. He's a former administrator at a hospital, and my really dear friend and mentor, I would say, and also a pediatrician, Dr. Marian Maas, Mass. And their idea was to form this large coalition of these grassroots organizations so then we could start to steer policy. And so she got to, the people who were the most vocal about specific topics, she got us together, and people not just vocal, but knowledgeable about specific topics. She got us together to write this large white paper. And then we went to Congress with our paper. We didn't just write it and say, here, read this. We went and she had made some connections with some of the congressmen and senators, and we scored the Library of Congress. And we actually put on a symposium and we presented our paper, basically. We presented our arguments for the policies that we were proposing in our paper. And so there was, a full day of speakers. This was in 2019, so Trump was still president then. And Dr. Ben Carson was one of our guest speakers. And then after we spoke about it, we had a room full of Democrats and Republicans. It wasn't just speaking and preaching to the crowd. We then went out. We had prearranged meetings and went to go and speak to each of the legislators about our work. Anybody pretty much who would have us, because we want to solve this healthcare thing. And if anybody wants to listen to our ideas, those ideas, we're going to talk to you about them. And so one of the things that we did argue for was something called transparency for pharmacy benefit managers and group purchasing organizations. And through all of that work and continued pressure, and not just our group, but for some other people who were starting to hear these terms, these words, we were introducing, legislators to this vocabulary and these ideas. The FTC was already looking into trade practices that they have, because they're exempt from the Stark laws. The Stark laws require physicians to report their conflicts of interest. So you can look up any one of us under our provider number, identifying number. You can look up, what any conflicts of interest we have, any relationships we have with pharma or industry or medical health industry. It's not perfect, but you look up mine and it has me affiliated with like 2 pharmaceutical companies in the last 2 years of like 2023. I left medicine in 2022. I have no industry relationships whatsoever. I did one research study with Pfizer back in 21, 22, one research study that I did on a drug that I was actually already using, and I wanted to get the proper dosing. But anyway, it's wrong. There's a ton of Nicole Johnsons who are physicians. So it's not perfect, but it is a way that you can look at physicians. But these companies, middlemen who decide a lot of things, including the cost of your medicines and what medicines get on your formulary, don't have to be transparent. They are exempt from these laws. And so we started what we think is a movement. And now that there is actually really good legislation supported by both Democrats and Republicans to make what they're doing transparent. And so we want to see that. So our efforts did not go in vain. It's possible. You can make a difference. That's the reason why I want to say that. So fast forward to 2022, I left my medical practice, and I went through a process of kind of re-evaluating who I am, what my purpose in life is, and this was me leaving intentionally. I left on good standing. There was no but I felt like I needed to do more than argue with the powers that be from within. It became really too challenging to continue to work in that environment. I was getting a lot of pressure. I was starting to have some, retaliation for things that I believed in, what I was thinking, and it wasn't coming direct. It wasn't obvious, so there was nothing I could sue about or anything. It was, for me, it was just real speculation that I was under a microscope, and it made my life miserable. So I left. There was not an easy answer clinically for me to find a new job in the career path that I had chosen. And so with my husband's support, I left, and then I had to find a new path. I had to find a new career. It's not easy. I was making a really, really comfortable salary. We were living very comfortably, and had a house that was paid off, 2 girls going to private school, and we weren't taking extravagant vacations or anything, or leading any extravagant lifestyle, but we were pretty comfortable. And I was the primary breadwinner, but I left it because it wasn't, I wasn't doing what I felt like I needed to be doing, and that I should have been doing. And what I was doing was interfering with something else, something greater, some other purpose, or some other path in my life, So anyway, so I've had to find what that is and define that. So I actually hired a coach, like a career coach, and walked through pretty rapidly what my own personal mission statement, developed my own website, developed an LLC, and I decided that I'm going to do healthcare policy consulting. and that is anything from, you know, being serving as an advisor to someone or some organization, or, you know, to writing my own independent thoughts, opinion pieces, op-eds, and that landed me a job where I am now the co-director of FAIR in medicine.
Hmm.
And Fair for All is an organization that began around early in 2021 in response to all of the revelations that we started to see during the COVID lockdowns about DEI policies. That was a big part of it, and kind of critical race theory. They were starting to see the discriminatory aspect of it and seeing that it was violating people's civil liberties, and that the ACLU really wasn't any longer living up to their end of the bar, like their stated mission, which was to protect people's civil liberties. And so that's how FAIR, the organization, initially it's called the Foundation Against Intolerance and Racism, and so that was the initial goal, was to help people who were kind of suffering under this new world order, where, you know, identity politics was sort of leading in the institutional culture sphere and harming certain people. And so people started coming forward with their stories of harm. Gabs Clark was one of their leading cases. She filed the first lawsuit in the country, federal lawsuit, against a public school for indoctrinating her child with CRT. And they really forced her mixed race son to identify as an oppressed kid because he was light skinned. And that, so she filed that, and that sort of launched FAIR into what it is today. And oh, look, what you're seeing on the screen is one of the articles I wrote, A Call to Return.
I know, that's why I'm showcasing it.
A Call to Return to Core Medical Principles.
People need
So that's how FAIR, that's how FAIR was born. And it really and it remains to be a support system for people who have these complaints of institutions who are violating their civil liberties in this cultural realm, and, you know, specifically identity politics based. But it has grown to cover the basis, and pretty much we're trying to, you know, and branching out into all different aspects. So there's FAIR and the legal arm of FAIR, there's the education arm of FAIR, and there is the medical arm. There's also arts. And so we're trying to.
Where is the arts section? I'm just curious, because let's go back to this.
Yeah, go to the main page. You're in the Substack, so we want to get out of the Substack and go back to the main website.
Okay, share this here, because I just want to say that, you know, I've said earlier before why you and I connect is you're one of the very few examples. Few, unfortunately, there should be more people out there who knows how to integrate their life's passion and calling with the arena of politics, and people don't know how to do that, you know, but you know how to do that, and that's what that's what I call being intentional.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm very interested in teaching that in my area of my industry, which is the arts. And I'm glad you're doing it. You're showing an example of what, you know, how this is done in medicine. But there, in the area of the arts, I don't see it. It's still there's still a vacuum there. So where do I go for the arts here?
What we do, or you could do what we do.
FAIR in the arts.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah, this is another unmet need, a huge unmet need here, because this entire industry is what defines the look appeal and the feel of ideas. You know, they decide the aesthetic of it, and I really haven't seen any association addressing this the way you're doing in medicine.
Yeah, and so when Fair in Medicine first started, it was also around the time, again, remember this is back in 2020, early 2021, late 2020, when we were starting to see all of this stuff revealed through the lockdown era, right? And schools were on Zoom and parents were discovering things that were happening in their schools. And so with Fair in Medicine, they started seeing the whole transgender movement on kids. And so that was a really huge focus. But after that, then some other groups started to take a more specialized look at that, and so that was born, GenSpect, some of these other groups, the actual, there was a branch of members of the American Academy of Pediatrics who then formed what we call SEGM, which is basically a group that looks, right now my brain is blanking on what the acronym stands for. It's SEGM, but they are a group of pediatricians who then looked at all of the science behind gender affirming care and basically, are presenting that information in a way that is showing that it's a bogus route. And so when I joined FAIR, they were in a transitioning period with their medical director, had left to join another organization, and to really concentrate on the gender aspect of things. When I joined, I wanted to bring a different focus, which was pretty much diving into the root of the culture in medicine that is driving all of these ideologies. So what is it that's making us promote implicit bias training in medicine? What is making us think that we need DEI policies in medicine and healthcare? What is causing us to promote science that is not rigorous gold standard science, and to push a political activist agenda? And what is that thing? What are those things that are contributing to this shift in culture? And then two, are those things causing us to look at medicine in a way that takes away from the actual purpose of what we should be doing, and that is healing, promoting health and healing? Are we doing that are we advancing these political activist ideologies to the detriment of the system? Are we really doing that? And then how do we fix that? What are the solutions here? So our goal right now is pretty broad. We broaden it from just a gender issue to starting to think about all of these other things. So back to kind of basic ethical principles of medicine. What is medicine? What is it supposed to be doing? And we're finding that people are distrustful of the public health system. They're distrustful of healthcare, of their own physicians, and health professionals. And there are a number of things that are causing that. And so what I'm trying to do is kind of a lot of stuff. If you look on our page, there's a big mission statement, but I'm doing webinars. We're doing writing. Most of the writing on that page is old stuff. It's kind of original FAIR writing. But right now my most recent piece was a discovery about medical institutions incorporating DEI policy into the Hippocratic Oath. And the Hippocratic Oath, as most of you know, is sort of this pledge that physicians take and some other health professionals take when they embark upon their career. And it's based on Hippocratic principles. Well, Hippocratic principles are sort of the ethical and scientific principles of practicing medicine, which is putting the doctor and patient first without kind of any interference from any other conflicting entities, doing the least amount of harm to achieve the goal of healing, right? So minimizing harm. We know that some things are going to come with a consequence or risk. There's nothing that we do, in an intervention wise through medicine or surgery that's going to come without risk. But we need to maximize the benefit and minimize the harm. And then, we really need to focus on the human body in its entirety and everything that goes into creating a healthy person. And so that's sort of the Hippocratic principles of ethics, right? Of medicine. And what we seem to be doing is gone, far away from that. So institutions are incorporating social activism and political activism into the pledge that physicians take, I believe is detrimental. And where we've seen it go wrong is the latest revelation that Aaron Sibarium, who's a health and science journalist, posted on X, that someone had sent to him the requirements for faculty promotion at Brown University School of Medicine. And those requirements, so when you get promoted in an academic center, especially in anywhere, you actually have these lists of criteria, right, before you get selected for promotion. There's major criteria and there's minor criteria. Well, what Brown University School of Medicine did was make DEI a major criteria, and then a minor criteria was patient care.
So are people under the illusion, is it an illusion that just because we have Trump in the office, that things would just magically resolve itself, that these captured institutions would, turn the way of MAGA, or people just being naive about how entrenched DEI is?
This stuff is entrenched. So the dog, hello. He's scratching. Hilarious. Okay. The AAMC, which is American Association of Medical Colleges, which is kind of like the overseeing body of medical colleges, gives, kind of their policy statement. And their policy statement, they want, pretty much every single medical school to be talking about DEI. That has been the case for, quite a few years now. And they doubled down on that back in June with I think it was, or it might have been April, but there's like an official statement that they created in 2024. And we know from their own data that more than 95% of medical schools have some sort of DEI policy in their, kind of curriculum standards. When you look at the accreditation bodies for medical curriculum, that's that's a separate accreditation body. They list cultural competency, pretty much using the in terms of structural kind of racism and inequities within their curriculum. So they require this of all schools in order for them to be accredited medical schools, right? And so this is already deeply embedded here in our medical schools. However, the Trump administration, yes, with the executive order that he passed on DEI, included that there were any schools that were publicly funded would lose their funding if they had these types of policies. So yeah, it's going to have an effect on schools that are publicly funded. It's not going to shift the ideology within the school environment, and it's definitely not going to directly affect private schools very much. Now, granted, most of these schools actually do get research funding through the NIH. So that is going to have some effect there. Whether or not they're going to be able to do more studies with this sort of as an implicit bias as a basis and that kind of thing, is going to be limited and restricted. But what I believe is going to happen is that this is going to be restructured and reformed in some other way. I don't know exactly what it is yet.
You mean DEI is going to, like a virus, know how to mutate itself to survive and continue? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah,
when you
well,
say
there are
that?
people who fundamentally believe that implicit bias is dictating the way that we treat patients and the way that we learn medicine, the way that we enroll medical students, the way that we hire physicians and faculty and promote faculty. If there are people who fundamentally believe that, we are not going to get rid of that fundamental belief without demonstrating that they are either wrong or there's a different way to go about this. And that's the problem that's
Okay.
what I'm seeing. Like, so I think
So the way I see it, it's almost like it's not a fair fight, pun intended, because you are talking about medicine, which is scientific, right? It's based on evidence based, and all that. But you have something coming out, something that's implicit bias. That's like, it's not scientific based. It's almost in the realm of philosophy, or
well, technically, they actually do use. There's research that they use to support their theories. Now, whether or not this is
they
valid,
made it scientific.
yeah,
So
yeah, whether or not this is validated. So, for example, there is this one of the studies on pain perception showed that doctors do incorrectly perceive or underestimate pain in their Black patients by 50% more than they underestimate pain in their white patients. Now, they're using that literature to say that there's inherent racism in medicine, right? They're not taking a deep dive into why that bias exists, if it does exist. They're not even saying that it's white physicians that do this more than Black physicians. They're just using this as their badge to say there's racism in the way we practice medicine, right? And so they have the literature to support that. The counter argument doesn't. Like, we can just say philosophically, well, I'm not a racist. I treat all of my patients the same. Well, the problem is the research to prove otherwise really hasn't been funded. You know what I mean?
Right.
And not even saying that the research that the proponents of DEI and implicit bias training is actually proving their point. It's just they're leading the argument, and they're leading the discussion and the policy discussion.
But wouldn't one of the strategy be then to take apart these so-called scientific studies to back it up? Like, just you have to, like,
yes, that should
missile
be the strategy, right?
Who conducted this study? Was it a raccoon? I mean, like, who came up with I'm just saying raccoon just because there are a lot of raccoons here, so it's probably people not relating to that. But like, who are these people, mysterious people behind the curtain, who just invented these papers?
Well, see, it's not even like these mysterious people. You have to consider that the sort of racism and DEI type of culture, this oppressor, this all of this this ideology has been in the public school system since the late 80s. So these
I didn't know that.
Yeah, these are we're dealing with people who had this type of belief and have grown up with this type of belief. They've gone to university, and then now they're in medical school, right? So, and they're out in every other industry. That's how they're influencing politics. They truly believe this. So those of us who don't believe it have not done a great job of presenting a counter argument, getting to the depth of what the real problem is. Is the problem a perception of racism? Is racism really there? And then what is the solution to it? Is there a solution to it? We haven't proposed a really good argument, and we also are not embedded in the culture the same way. So we can't, it's very difficult for us to argue it. So, I mean, I don't want to present it in a way that it's completely like something that we can't do, because I think some of the work that we're doing at FAIR is really good. FAIR's doing, has done some sort of alternative diversity training type stuff in the past. FAIR's also done, is looking up, kind of like ethnic studies curriculum, and creating that and trying to get that validated so that that can get into the K through 12 schools. So, that's an idea. But from my end of things as the FAIR and Medicine director, what I really want to do is get in and actually bring a scientific and medical, voice to this stuff.
Okay.
Let's look at the data here. Let's really look at the data. Let's objectively look at the data and say, have they proved that this is an issue?
Okay.
Have they proved this? And then what resources are they using to make these policy statements? Right now, there are 4 state medical boards that require either a renewal for licensure or getting a new license, that there needs to be some sort of continuing education on cultural competency, which is basically, this bias type of thing. The state of New York is one of them that requires it. Illinois, Nevada, not Nevada, California, and Michigan are the 4, and then Oregon also too. So there's 5. And so they're using some of the same literature. They're all kind of using the same stuff. So, okay, let's take an objective look at this literature. Is it saying what they're telling us it says? Is there truly racism here? Is there truly implicit bias that in such a way that it's affecting patient health and patient outcomes? Are we measuring this properly? We really do need to do that, take a deep dive in that, and then just say, look, is this legitimate? Is this a legitimate argument here? So that's what I would like. That's what I'm kind of doing right now. I'm in the information gathering stage. And we have a group of fellows that are signed on to help me. So take a look at that. So we're in that information gathering stage, but we're also looking at ways to see is okay. So if it's not true what they're saying, then okay, what should our next step be? Trump's got these executive orders. What should our next step be? Should we just completely eliminate this stuff altogether? Probably yes, right? Especially if it's harmful. But then what do we do? Because there's a vacuum, right? There's a vacuum of people. There's a group of people who actually have the perception that this stuff is valid, that is true. What do we do with them? What do we do with the kid who's growing up who believes truly that there is bias and there is racism, and that's going to affect their life decisions or affect their health and their health care and well-being, right? We need to address that. So we need to provide some sort of answer, for those people. What is that answer? And that's kind of something, it's a lofty goal. I personally don't believe that you could ever solve racism. I think I'm a Christian unapologetically. I believe it's a sin to believe that someone is inferior to you. Because that's what racism and bigotry is, right? Or to make these judgments about people, groups of people, without looking at them as individuals. I think that's sinful in nature, and I don't think that we'll ever eliminate sin. Those people will always be there. But are there parts of our system, either politically or medically or health institutions, that are actually influencing policies that are actually harmful to people? Then that's something that we need to change directly.
Okay. So let me point out a couple of things. I noticed that there was a line in FAIR that says it's a nonpartisan. But I'm going to tell you right now that that word does not test very well. As someone who works in marketing and advertising, the word nonpartisan has already been used by people who are actually hyper-partisan to
Yeah.
say, "Oh, we're not partisan." So
Yes.
I want to point
Yes.
that one out.
Yes.
And the other thing is,
Yes.
I'm
And that's something internally that, you know, we're struggling with too, is
okay.
because, you know, particularly the people who, because, you know, we have a board and we have advisors and we have people who, you know, donate, right? And people don't want to openly donate to something that's right wing if they're left wing or the opposite, correct?
Well,
So,
yeah. So
you
that's
know,
that's what I mean, because like in what I do, part of my job is that we actually test words for campaigns.
okay.
We really drill down to how a letter or a syllable will resonate with people. So nonpartisan is unfortunately, just want to put it out there, it's not working anymore,
Wow.
because when you say
That is really
nonpartisan, you're
good.
saying a partisan. So that's one thing to note. The
Okay.
other thing is, I do appreciate FAIR, just from poking around, looking at the aesthetic and the layout that the organization is trying to present itself as an objective think tank. But the problem with think tanks is that, as we know, think tanks, there are activist think tanks out there, and that's the culture right now. The minute they see you're a think tank or you're writing some kind of policy paper, they would the first thing people will do is see if there's a dotted line between you and to a who's in office right now. That's how people think now,
Mm,
unfortunately.
yep. It
You
makes
know,
sense.
so
It makes sense.
so I
Yep.
think in the area of medicine, you have the challenges are pretty kind of daunting. It's not just that you talk about biases. People are already kind of conditioned to think that, okay, if Dr. Johnson wrote an objective policy piece on policy, the first thing people will want to do is look her up online to see if there's anything traced back to, I don't know, NDR or any, you know, has she mentioned anything
Right.
about, unfortunately, that's how people think. So I don't
Yep.
know,
Yep.
moving forward,
Uh-huh.
like the marketing team at FAIR had to just be very strategic and think about, you know, how to get your work and ideas out there without these baggages and these kind of biases. And it's tough, it's difficult. That's why I use an alias here.
No. I get it. Okay, so
Mhm.
wait. Okay, so go back to when you said the word nonpartisan doesn't test well. Doesn't test well with what audience? Like, what are you? What?
People who consume anything that's like, people who are, we're not people who like go to Instagram to just like outrage. I'm talking about people who really want to more independence, because that I would say I'm more in the know with the independent space, and that's why, you know, this group is kind of
Okay.
named indie, because I've really done a lot of research about these people who are traditionally not engaged.
Okay.
But then when there's something that you light a fire under their ass, then maybe they will look at a policy. But then when they see the word nonpartisan,
Mhm.
it, it it's already a spoiled word. So
Got it. So you. So these
so
people
any think
tend
tank,
to believe that the
yeah.
word nonpartisan means you are partisan.
Yeah, it's like saying, "Oh, I'm not partisan, but I am." So that's how it come up. I'm just like, I'm helping out anyone out there. Okay, if you're having to watching this right now, whether you're an actual nonpartisan or you're actually partisan pretending to nonpartisan, you just have to come up with something else, because that's the strength
So,
of the world on that side. Let's put it that way: is that they have the ability to synthesize new words. In
okay.
fact, a lot of the things that we're reacting to are the words and ideas that they put out. So if you want to keep ahead of the game, one of the necessary exercise is to think of another way of using the word nonpartisan. That is very important, because if you say nonpartisan, people are going to be like, oh, here we go again, another think tank, the partisan think tank that says they're nonpartisan, but they have an agenda.
got you.
At least that's how independent people will read it. So yeah, rethink about using the word.
Really important. That's really important, because we're actually yeah, a lot of a lot of people do struggle with that, especially when, you know, there's a there was recently a Forbes article that was written about organizations and where they fall. on certain issues, and on the issue of DEI, FAIR was listed as under the conservative umbrella, right?
This is what I mean. This is
Uh-huh.
what I mean. Like this is like it's so rigged right now. You really have to know how to navigate these minefield of words. I appreciate a few things that you said about how FAIR is taking like a very procedural, like they're giving people the benefit of the doubt, and it said, okay, if you say this racism, let's look at it and study it. That's traditionally not the reaction on the right. It's like, right? It's like dismiss. But that's not winning. So I like that.
Well, I'm not saying that FAIR's doing that. I said that I'm doing that as part of FAIR in medicine. That is
well,
my,
you're bringing that culture to
my
FAIR.
specific goal. Yes.
Yeah, you're bringing the culture to FAIR, and that's important. We need to teach people that. You're giving the quote unquote opponents, I don't probably even like the word opponents, the benefit of the doubt. You have shown that you are approaching this in a scientific method. There's a claim, and you're looking at it and you're presenting it, and you're not doing it because you are part of a political party, although the strategy on that side will be first to park you under a party and then dismiss you. That's why I'm so big on the word indie, and as much as I can, independent. And you know what? If there comes a day where that word doesn't test well too, I'm ready to drop it, because I'm more interested in advancing the truth. I'm not hung up on words and anything like that. So appreciate what you're doing there.
Do you think independent is better? It tests better than nonpartisan?
So it's interesting. In the last 4 or 5 years, we've been seeing the word independent trending from people across the spectrum. That's interesting. Then there may come a time where the word independent will just lose its edge too, because people would say, "Oh, the guy says he's independent, but he's just trying to, not say that he's independent."
Yeah, because honestly, I think like when I look at people politically who say that they're independents, I have this fight with my husband often too, this argument with him. It's like most people who are independent tend to still vote one way.
Yes. And I call myself
unless they don't have a choice, because so like when we lived in Cleveland, the tickets were mostly Democrats, so I had to vote for Democrats even though I was a Republican. I had no choice. There were Democrats, running on, for mayor. I mean, I had no choice, right? To who to pick to vote for. For city council, you had to vote for them, and some of these cities are really getting clever, and they're framing some of these offices as without any party affiliation, but you're still stuck with two Democrats, opposing each other. So it's not like
I know what they're doing. I've done a lot of research into this, Nikki. Like, looking at voter rolls. Did you know that actually independent, like authentically unaffiliated people, are a pretty sizable chunk? We always think that registered D, registered R. There's a huge chunk of unaffiliated people, and they can swing the results in any states, like in places like Portland and New York.
I prefer to call independent voters swing voters. That's what I prefer.
Yes, that's it. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, because that way they don't feel like you can't take them for granted, because if you
and it tends to be more that, but still, like I still think the majority will vote, for a single party. However, there is a group that never, that intentionally doesn't declare a party, who will be that swing vote. I agree with you there on that part. So I think that that might even be a separate demographic that doesn't get studied. And then there's also the not likely voters who in 2024 did turn up and turn out, and I think they also made a difference.
So it's interesting you said that. So I have data on the not likely voters. Mm-hmm. When the not likely voters show up, they tend to vote, let's say, more on on our side, for lack of a better word. It's so interesting. And then within the so-called independent vote, there are still spectrums too, but they do tend to vote more on issues. They don't typically like vote on DEI stuff.
Correct.
You know,
Correct. They
they're
vote
not,
on
and they're
policy
not.
issues that directly affect them.
Yeah,
Yes.
they're not interested in the aesthetics of, say, Trump 2.0 or anything. They like none of that. I mean, some of them may even be like a little off-putting to them. It's like, just tell me what policy is. So in that respect, like the policy papers you put out, it actually would do very well in that segment. So if you can find like an independent, unaffiliated voter who is like a policymaker or has the resources, I can imagine what FAIR is doing would resonate well with them. But I would not recommend putting nonpartisan, because independents,
that makes a lot of sense.
because independents are highly sus when everyone comes up to them and say, I'm a nonpartisan. Yeah, right. You know, where have we seen that before? We've been seeing everyone nonpartisan, like nonpartisan. Yeah. You're just a partisan pretending they're nonpartisan to get my vote. So
Yep. That makes sense. That makes sense. All right, cool.
So, we're kind of coming up to the hour here. I really enjoy these conversations with you, because I feel like we're really getting into the stuff that I always want to talk about, you know, which is my philosophy is connecting thought to meaningful action, because anything beyond that is just reaction, which is what we've been doing. So I think you are a good example of just knowing how to align your professional passion with this area. And that's where I think people can stay engaged. This is how you stay engaged. You don't have to wait for, MAGA Inc. to the theatrics, like you said. You don't have to like be on the lookout for the next big headline, because I feel like I'm a little concerned. I'm seeing the energy kind of waning a little, and people are just getting back to their little hamster wheel.
Yeah. And I think there's two themes of my life is really just kind of informing people about things that they may not know, presenting actual facts and data. I don't make recommendations for life, for nutrition or diet or exercise or anything like that. Either in my social media posts or my Substacks, I tend to focus more kind of debunking bad information, to tell you the truth, and showing people what the good information is out there. And
is
then
that an underhanded compliment and underhanded remark at RFK? I don't make recommendations.
Well, no, not really at all. Not related to him. I think he's a he's a separate issue. Like, I think there's things with him that are good, that he's bringing issues and concerns to light. He's articulating some concerns that people have, and that's okay. But my realm. In my realm, I want to not necessarily bring concerns. Are those concerns valid? Are those backed with science and data? And then part two is, what is the solution? And is whether this administration is the solution, whether the previous administration is the solution, or whether there's another solution, which I tend to go for, is going to be based on what the truth is and what information we have, whether the truth matches what our perception is and our belief. And that's a big challenge, though, because there's so much information, especially when it comes to healthcare and health policy. There's I hate the word misinformation, because the left used it as a political bludgeon. But there's a lot of misinformation, and there's misinformation on the right, on the political right, and on the political left. And what was once political left type of thinking, in a lot of ways, has become political right type of thinking in the healthcare realm. Just one specific example is the vaccine movement, and questioning all the vaccines. That was initially Jenny McCarthy and in small town, California, ideology. That was that was the left, that wasn't on the right, and now it's the right have become the crunchy granola people, and so like,
Crunchy granola
you
people.
know, so
I love that.
so I don't think these ideas are necessarily political. I think they've been used as political bludgeons. But so for me, I really try to focus on what the actual information is, what's the truth, what's the source of the information, and then what is really the solution to the actual problem. So
Yeah.
that's where I sit.
I just got
So,
another
and
download that
I don't
Mhm.
know. I'm still. I'm not. I don't necessarily know that Bobby Kennedy is going to is the represents all of those things that I just said, but I do know for sure that he's bringing this to a national conversation, and then there will be, and he is going to generate a focus on where we put our health, or at least
Yeah.
our federal dollars.
Yeah,
Looking
I
at.
agree. I don't think he's representative of everything. But you said the word theatrical in the beginning, so there's some value in that. Sometimes people need some theatrics, and you can deploy that properly, if I'm making sense. But I just got a download, and I wanted to share this before we wrap up. Is you mentioned who's that woman on the West Coast that just started
Jenny
kind of like
McCarthy.
Jenny McCarthy. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Jenny McCarthy. Like, was she on MTV, right? She was on MTV.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Uh-huh.
Here's another very good tactic that I'm trying to teach people that you can use in your work too. Learn to or try to synthesize new words. This is how we always keep ahead of the other side. Like, a lot of our political currency dialogue right now is based on the words that they synthesize on that side, and we are forced to use and defend ourselves, in these concepts. So it's not exclusive to them. So I know you have a scientific mind, but it's like, this is a marketing tactic. Come up with a new word to describe an idea and a concept, and then there's something about the virology, if I can use, about words. It's people just pick it up and run with it. And then people, like the word woke, right? Someone made that up. It was found its way to the media, and it just circulated very quickly, or DEI. So that tactic is not exclusive to people who are not.
Actually, no, that didn't happen, because back in the 60s or 70s, there was just Black musician who came up with the word woke, basically stating that we're awake to what's happening.
I did not know that. I did not know that. But I think I'm making
oh my God, I'm blanking on his name right now. But yeah, that's where it started. And then when the Black Lives Matter movement came up, locally, Black people were saying, now we are awake to what these policies are doing and what's happening.
Wow. Okay.
That's where it started. That started using it to describe all things far left, and then that's how it became, sort of this.
But my point being that it is a creative exercise too. And I think that for policy thinkers such as yourself, that's a tactic that you might that all people interested in truth might consider as part of their repertoire, is that take your policy and do what the people on the other side, for the lack of a better word, are also excel in, which is to create words that become political and cultural currency that people can run with, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like, if there's a way for you to take your paper, and then there is a word
that dog's got something he's not supposed
like crazy
to
dog. Hey, crazy dog could be like a phrase right there, and people be saying, hey, it's crazy dog, and right away they associate it with that piece of policy and idea that you run with. I mean, it's so interesting. I said, like, I do this for a living. It's like this virology that just how things just transmit and find its way into political power and currency. So that's it for me. All right. Well, enjoy today's. It feels like a brainstorming session, which is what I always enjoy doing. So, okay. Well, that's it for me. Check out Nikki's work on free2care.org. And hopefully the other two, our little two co-panels would find their way back here for episode 28. And have a great weekend. And I shall see you soon.
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Thank
Nikki.
you. Thank you. I hope I didn't bore you guys too much.
No, not at all. Thank you. Thank you for everything. Thank you for all those insights